Fan games are, in my opinion at least, some of the most intriguing games to loom the realm of Roblox. If we're being technical here, Piggy, which I just started reviewing, is sort of a granny fan game, or at the very least, it started as one. It's evolved to the point where it's more so its own thing at this rate, but it wouldn't exist without taking inspiration from the game. Plus, Lumion Legacy probably never would have existed if it weren't for Pokemon Break Bronze, which, take a guess, is a fan game of.
Correct.
Not to mention there are a sheer amount of anime-related games on the front page, which are subsequently made by fans of said anime. Which, as someone who doesn't watch anime, this makes me very confused. For the purpose of this video in specific, I will only look at fan games that are based off of pre-existing video games, and I will definitely not be covering fan games related to more so questionable experiences. Now, probably the most obvious place to start to look for fan games would be the Super Mario franchise. We will be going over 8 gaming franchises that have interesting fan games pertaining to them over this 2-part series, so let's start with Super Mario. A large majority of halfway decent games under the Super Mario series that I could find are still fan games, but in spirit. They're more so fan spiritual successors, so to speak. For example, they essentially do what Bug Fables did by crafting a game in the same generalized art style of the Super Mario franchise, specifically Paper Mario. Despite the very apparent inspiration the game evidently takes, the game still developed its own style with original characters and whatnot to differentiate itself from Paper Mario. That general concept is essentially what games like Robot 64 and RBLXware commit to doing. They take aspects from the original source material and tweak them in intriguing ways while still maintaining an original style. I've already stated my opinions on Robot 64, yeah, it's good. While the moveset for Robot 64 is not as versatile as Super Mario 64, and the controls can be a tad slippery at times, the moveset is still very good, even if it doesn't have the versatility of... I like how the moveset houses numerous jumps that allows one to approach any obstacle with a multitude of possibilities. I think fan games that are, quote, fan spiritual successors, games that don't directly mention the games they take inspiration from, can be a little bit more interesting. Without the usage of Mario characters, more creativity has to fill in the gaps that copyright has to form.
I'm gonna stop talking about this game though, because I've already made a video on it, okay?
RBLXware, on the other hand, I have not touched upon. RBLXware has a set of sporadic yet quite thrilling micro games, plus has a very spunky sounding soundtrack that provides a really unique spin on certain Nintendo songs. Also, while the special rounds in this game can be very trivial in terms of what they do to the gameplay, first person round, okay, some really do change up the game. Like Beat Block, where you refrain from moving and timing to the music's beeps, Simon Says, which should dictate when you should actually try in a microgame, and Boss Rush. It feels rather interesting to play a WarioWare-esque game with the amount of freedom and movement that Roblox can power. And the game apparently is quite evidently inspired by TF2ware, which, unsurprisingly, is inspired by WarioWare. Roblox Odyssey is also in the general vicinity of the likeness of these two games, although to my knowledge it's either been cancelled or has been put on hold for a very lengthy time. This was going to be a game that was somewhat akin in concept to Robot 64, being similar to that game by being a fan spiritual successor by replicating the overall style of a pre-existing 3D Mario game. And man, the moveset in this game is great. You have just enough inertia after halting your character, but you don't have too much to make your character's controls feel unresponsive. Plus, your character's heightened swiftness, jump height, and falling rate makes the moveset in this game feel just right. All of this gives your character the correct amount of agility and makes the moveset feel like you're controlling a character with actual mass. Too bad this game isn't finished though. Speaking of unfinished games, Super Ronaldo Stargaze, originally, and I quote, Super Mario Stargaze, in its current form is actually really good for a more so older game. The game surprisingly has a complete and dynamic moveset, barring the fact I find the physics of it rather stiff and not as versatile as actual 3D Mario games. The game also possesses awe-inspiring original music, paired with open, populated with decoration, objective-filled, but still simple to understand level design. These two games right here would have been absolutely impeccable if they were finished. Of course, there's also Super Paper Roblox, but I will get to that in another video. I remember a couple of other Mario fan games that I used to play when I was just a bit more youthful. Mario Adventure Obby was honestly a decent early Roblox obby for what it was, and Paper Mario Roleplay was excellent. For Mario Adventure Obby, I really liked the more open-ended obby design in some of the levels, paired with some of the more dynamic and moving parts of the obbies, such as these disappearing platforms and these bullet bills. Plus, the way that the levels get progressively more expansive and non-linear in my opinion was quite ahead of its time for a game made in 2008, and makes the game feel as if it's changing as you go on. And now this game right here, Paper Mario Roleplay. I absolutely adored this game back in the day, partly because of the fact that the game was architecturally pretty much exact to Paper Mario games, and the rest of the overall aesthetics of the game was very similar to the Paper Mario art style. In addition, there were a multitude of really nice and luscious locations that were packed with decoration, plus a bunch of other Paper Mario characters to play as. It was overall just a really polished passion project made by adamant fans of Paper Mario. However, both of these games don't exactly exist anymore. Kinda. Mario Adventure Obby was reworked into this masterpiece with purposely crude drawings of red plumber characters, and Super Paper Mario Roleplay still lives on in
Storybook roleplay and also
Worlds Collide DX. And let me tell you, that game in particular rekindles a lot of the magic I had for that game and also was pretty on par with it in terms of polish. Worlds Collide DX is more so aesthetically similar to early Mario and Luigi RPG games, and like Paper Mario, that's an art style that I really quite like. The game also inhabits what is hands down the biggest selection of characters I've ever seen in a roleplay game ever. Need an example? Well, the game has characters from... I can only imagine the amount of work it took to get all these decals of these characters accepted by Roblox. I presume Roblox has to comply with Nintendo's policy against fanworks. Nintendo takes down a lot of fanworks that pertain to Mario, not just on Roblox, so because of that, Mario fan games on Roblox get taken down quite a bit. And while I was researching Mario fan games on Roblox, I found a bunch that I wish I could play, but I couldn't due to the fact that they were Nintendo'd. Or because they just never got finished. Mario fan games that I cannot play currently would include this 2D Mario recreation made in 2009, Super Mario Odyssey remade, no, not Roblox Odyssey, 2 Super Mario 64 remakes, this one Super Mario Galaxy-esque game, and Super Mario Odyssey Roleplay, which has been taken down 3 times. However, I have yet to talk about what I consider my personal favorite Mario fan game on Roblox. That is Roleplay Extravaganza, colloquially known as Attention to Detail, the game. Remember what I said earlier about how I prefer fan games that aim to merely make experiences similar to pre-existing source material? Meaning not recreating it one-to-one, which forces one to formulate more creative ideas in the process? Well, Roleplay Extravaganza is kind of in the happy medium between imitation and replication. What if, using pre-existing source material, we stitched together a bunch of ideas from the makers of said material to craft this all-in-one experience of a series, tying disjointed elements from the series and in the process making something fresh? Well, Roleplay Extravaganza pretty much does that in manners I will begin to explain. Roleplay Extravaganza has quite an expansive map capacity that references countless locations from the Paper Mario franchise, with bright visuals that feel near identical to the games they take inspiration from. All of these seemingly disjointed locations and characters from a handful of games are stitched together so fluently with dynamic map design that ties all these locations into one game seamlessly. Locations are remade, character assets are recreated in HD, and a bunch of characters that were previously non-paperized now have that look. Look how flat, boxy, and angular some of these locations are paired with their slightly low-quality textures. To me, it invokes the arts and crafty, almost amateurish nature found in all the Paper Mario games, at least visually. And you seriously can't beat just how organic the transitions between some of these locations are. There's another Paper Mario roleplay game by the name of Storybook Roleplay that also does these transitions really well. Like, for example, to get to Rogueport, you have to use a boat. And to get to another location, you have to use a train only found in the first Paper Mario game to get transported to a location found in the second Paper Mario game. That's pretty creative. So, yeah. I really like how transformative this fan game is. You could just recreate everything one-to-one in a fan game and call it a day, but that's boring and basically plagiarism. Try to add your own spin to show how you appreciate the original source material by tweaking it or even adding in elements that are still faithful to the original title, but still quite transformative. Or if you want, take it a step further and take the Robot 64 approach by making something similar but not identical. Just be careful of copyright if you make a Mario fan game. Okay. Oh, that's finally one game franchise that has interesting fan games. What do we have next? Oh, Sonic fan games. There's a bunch of those on Roblox, actually. Of course, there's the obligatory roleplay games and the recreations of mainline titles, but let's just start with the mainline title recreations. The recreations tend to mimic the controls of actual 3D Sonic games with bizarre levels of precision, accuracy, and faithfulness. Such examples would include Sonic World Adventure, Exploration Project, Sonic Phantoms, the Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 reboot, Sonic Unleashed Revised, the Project Adventure X gameplay demo, Sonic Infinity demo, and Sonic Infinity DX, plus Sonic Eclipse. When that game was to exist anyways. I heavily adore the fact that these demos even get Sonic's character model down pretty immaculately. The models they utilize are very smooth, have sharp textures, and have lifelike animations. More times than not, it seems that fan games typically may use rather low poly models that are stylized to fit Roblox's classy blocky style, which are sometimes paired with rather awkward and stiff animations. Or they just make the characters paper thin. Okay, that's an exception. Seeing this level of depth recreate the controls and aesthetics of Sonic with such accuracy impresses me, especially on Roblox. Not to mention, they control nice. Having that reticle when you're nearing an object and having your character subtly stick to the surface it's upon makes Sonic in 3D work surprisingly well. Especially with the keyboard and mouse setup, and especially on Roblox. How I praised Roblox Odyssey's moveset for having swift, agile movement that makes your character feel nimble whilst retaining a sense of weight can pretty much be applied to the way that at least a portion of these games feel. So overall, it's replicated quite well. However, I also praised Roblox Odyssey and games alike for trying something new with their source material, and also said that over-replication can make a game almost feel kind of cheap. Yet here I am, saying how much I like how well these games replicate source material, which is the antithesis of trying something new. What's going on here? While my opinion does stand, I do prefer the more transformative games. You have to admit there's sort of a novelty and almost kind of impressiveness to how well fan games can replicate source material, if done correctly. Speaking of which, Pyrite Adventure 1 and 2 were a unique set of games in my opinion, although I do vastly prefer the latter. The first one was decent, I guess, and it was weirdly based off of Sonic the Hedgehog from 2006, despite the logo and the namesake hinting that it's not that. The graphics for the game were a bit drab, the levels were pretty static and straightforward, plus there weren't really many characters carrying dialogue. Not to mention your character felt weirdly floaty and typically not as swift as Sonic usually is for whatever reason. Your moveset wasn't too expansive either, it really only granted you the ability to jump, roll, and run. A moveset is definitely what makes or breaks a platformer for me, since movement, platforming, is the point of the genre. A range of moves that can be used in any way at any times I wish makes a game more freeform and quite exhilarating for a platformer. This game really didn't have that. The second game more so fixes all these issues. Your moveset is now a bit more expanded upon and the levels have more dynamic parts like the rails and whatnot, and you also feel quite agile and swift. There's also Roblox Minions Adventure Obby Despicable Forces, which is actually a decently length game and has all the attributes of a good moveset. The game also has original artwork and also voice lines sometimes. Also, these models are actually pretty good for some reason. Just don't look at them when they're happy. Bad mistake. Lastly, this game actually has a story for some reason that pertains to Gru leaving one of his minions behind for a solid minute, which prompts him the opportunity to use his powers to summon a bunch of villains in order to display his hatred for him, which said powers defeats Gru and imprisons him and causes him and many other characters from the franchise Despicable Me to go throughout the world to defeat these said villains, which causes you and Gru to almost end in a purgatory-esque world where nothing exists but you and him get out of it and destroy Mel's evil spirit, which makes him unevel again? All of the former games I've mentioned have replicated the 3D titles, but what about the more classic and standardized 2D entries? Well, there's classic Sonic Simulator and Sonic Speedway. Classic Sonic Simulator, like the 3D entries, replicates the source it's trying to replicate to exponential lengths, while Sonic Speedway is a bit more original. Classic Sonic Simulator I don't have too much to say on. Yeah, it's classic Sonic. The controls feel accurate and so does the sprite work, so good job. And then there's Sonic Speedway. I found your character in Sonic Speedway to feel weirdly heavy. It's hard to articulate, but something about your rather low jumps paired with how fast you can drop, in addition to how much inertia your character has, makes me feel like a rock. Inertia is a key part in a platformer moveset for me. Having just a little bit of inertia but not too much makes a character moveset feel more so realistic and not unresponsive. To me, at least. If you want my extended thoughts on this game, just read this comment. It pretty much encapsulates everything I thought whilst I played this game. Alright, onto the roleplay games. There is a multitude of them, so therefore I will be a bit more swift this time around. While roleplay games are not my thing at all, I do respect the level of effort, passion, and talent that goes into making these games. Numerous locations, characters, animations, and all other sorts of assets have to be implemented thoroughly into these games to provide the variety needed for a believable narrative. I also like how some of these roleplay games implement Sonic speed into them, making them fun to just merely mess about in.
Also, while I was editing video, a game called Sonic Speed Simulator came out, which you could say is a fan game, but it's like officially licensed by Sega, so I don't count it as one. It's more just, instead of being a fan game, it's just kind of a game. Also, it's a simulator, so I don't know what to say about it. So yeah, it exists. You don't have to comment about it. Thank you.
Alright, and there we go. Let's move on to the next game, Friday Night Funkin'. Yeah, sorry if you don't like this game, I just don't think it's that bad. Considering the multitude of Friday Night Funkin' mods, let's see how well it meshes with Roblox's user-generated focus. I can't really review these games thoroughly due to the fact that I'm rather poor at rhythm games, so let's bring this to somebody else. Everybody welcome Scout Epix Fox.
To compare both the original gameplay structure of Friday Night Funkin' and the gameplay found in fan games pertaining to the game, the gameplay for these fan iterations are pretty much the exact same as the original game.
Certain fan games such as Friday Night Blocks and even go as far to recreate the specialized mechanics featured in the original mods they try to mimic, such as Termination, Saw Blades, and Monochrome's word deciphering.
Some games like Friday Night Blocksin, Funky Friday, and yet another Funkin' Nights have overworlds with stages scattered around to play around with, making spectating matches quite seamless.
And honestly, adding in these little hub worlds into these games creates a more original aspect to these, which is especially appreciated if the hub worlds have little Easter eggs and whatnot. These original editions are quite good, but not all of these games are really that original.
One of the games is literally just the original game with some customization. Real nice. Speaking of customization, numerous FNF fan games contain different animations to choose from. Some of them include mics, although some games you have to pay for them, which usually means you have to play constantly over and over and over and over and over. Some animations are choppy yet bouncy, which I personally like, and others are smooth and dumb. If you're to go into any of these fan games, you're bound to see hundreds of mods that the original game consists of. It's mods like these which made the game so popular. And these are very good mods too, most of them. Though fan games aren't always perfect. Some games are completely unoriginal and just snatch the game and put it into Roblox. The menu, the sprites, and the backgrounds are all copied in these types of games, which completely remove the Roblox vibe of the game.
Yeah, that aspect of some of these fan games is rather disappointing. All I want in these fan games is for them to add just a little bit of Roblox twang, whether that be the visual style or the extra additions to the game. While some of the games are essentially just the original game in which you can play for free, they do allow for some genuine incentives over the original that don't just boil down to it's a free version of a popular game. Definitely the biggest incentive to play this over the original is the fact that multiplayer is eligible to play natively in these games. The source material for this game is currently in an unfinished state, so that means that multiplayer is not officially released. Not to mention these games contain a range of fan mods without the need to download them all separately, which may be convenient for some. Not to mention the games have decent charting, apparently. I'm just going off of what Epix Fox said since I'm bad at rhythm games. And guess what? Even if the musical timings were terrible, you could just offset the song in the options, which is quite nice.
Overall, these fan games are faithful to the original game and pretty much give Roblox a good taste for Friday Night Funkin', with some minor flaws. I like them. Good job. 10 out of 10. Yeah.
Thanks for doing that, man. I appreciate it. Alright, are you ready for the last game? I have deliberately chose what is probably the most bizarre example of a fan game on Roblox. This game has subject matter and elements such as self-harm, suicide, graphic imagery, and etc. So with that knowledge in mind, how was this game tweaked into a game on Roblox, a platform that has strict policies against those themes? Well, this game actually sanitizes a lot of the more grotesque scenes. If you need an example, there's this one character in the game called Yuri, which in one scene indulges in numerous acts of self-harm. So because of that, this game replaces that scene with this. What is going on, dude? Barring censorship, there's actually a fair amount of differences between actual Doki Doki Literature Club and this Roblox adaptation. One thing I found interesting about the game is it actually takes advantage of Roblox's 3D infrastructure, which allows you to move in and out between cutscenes, which is nice. One may claim that this game is rather redundant, as while it adds new additions to the original by allowing for more interactivity, the game maintains what is virtually an exact retelling of the original game. I would agree upon that standpoint, but I would argue that there is still some novelty to playing this game in specific if you have already experienced the original. This is because the game contextualizes the game's more meta themes into Roblox, having people to talk in chat, this developer shutdown fake out, the part of the game where you get to delete Monica, you actually get to write code in the game and you get to delete it, so cool, and other instances like that. Plus, this game frequently adds interactivities to prompts that would typically just describe an action. Like in Doki Doki Literature Club, you would probably just go to the vending machine, but in this game, you actually go to the vending machine. I like it. If there's one thing this game actually takes away, though, it would definitely be the expressions of the characters. The characters in this game have to feel the need to expressionlessly stare you down with very little alteration in their posing and facial expressions, so get used to that. So yeah, the game is actually quite good. I am just not personally into the original source material, as it involves a lot of talking to fictional females, which I do not personally like. So we're done. That was quite a bit, but I think it gives us a general grasp of how people on Roblox can mold pre-existing media into something novel and fresh, while still maintaining maintaining a sense of familiarity to the source material. Although a lot of these games can be chalked up to just being simply copies, there were a lot of fan games in here that I found novel despite being arguably quite derivative. And people can do it on Roblox in such a way that is not typically tapped upon, as they can allow for MMO type games such as roleplay games, and amongst them is that typical Roblox charm. We will continue to discuss fan games at a later date, but for now, I personally think that fan games on Roblox are... For the sake of their...
Here's Greg.
There's Greg! There's Greg! Yes! There's Greg! Yes!
Yes.